Hello, my name is Scott Smith, and today I'm very excited to give you a detailed, in-depth demonstration of the COBRA 18R2 Pro remote. Now, there's going to be a lot of different sections to this video, so in the description below, we've provided links to all of those sections. So, after watching this video, if you want to come back, rewatch one of those sections, we've provided those links for you below. In addition, if you're looking to get more of an introduction to COBRA, what are the different types of products that we sell? If you're brand new to COBRA, we've also provided a link to our Introduction to COBRA video below. It's a great video to watch, especially if you're brand new, and that'll give you some direction as far as what videos you may want to watch afterwards. Before I begin, a brief background on Cobra Firing Systems. The company was started in 2010, and today we have over 8,000 customers in over 80 countries. Our systems are used everywhere from the backyard enthusiasts all the way up to the largest display companies in the world, in addition to the special effects market. Within the demonstration today, we're going to cover everything about the 18R2, including the construction, the modular design, all of its features and functionality, add-ons, and future improvements. The 18R2 at its core is a wireless transmitter. One way to look at it is the 18R2 is essentially the air traffic controller of your entire pyrotechnics display. All instructions regarding what module and cue to fire are sent directly from the remote. These instructions can be sent manually by simply selecting a channel and pressing cues to fire, or by uploading a script that allows the remote to automate or semi-automate the entire display. We'll cover how all this works in a few minutes. So let's discuss the construction of the 18R2. The 18R2 is housed in a 2.5mm thick ABS enclosure with a black armored faceplate and completely modular design. So when we say modular design, what do we mean? Well, what it means is that all the different peripherals, including the key switch, the antenna connector, the battery harness, and even the transceiver, are all plugged directly into the unit. There is no hand soldering. So what this means is that it supports a very easy method for self-repair if you were to damage any of those parts. In addition, this modular design also allows support for adding different peripherals or features or add-ons that we come out with in the future. We'll cover this within a later section of this video. To demonstrate the ruggedness of the 18R2, I'm going to hit this unit with a hammer. And you'll notice that the unit is still intact, and you can really drop this unit. It can bang around a truck, so it's really designed to handle the day-to-day physical challenges of a shoot site. In addition, the unit also has a fairly good level of water resistance. The actual keypads that we employ sit underneath the enclosure, and they actually have walls that come up and seal against the inside of the enclosure. So even if you did get a light rain on this unit, it's not going to damage the unit. Obviously, if you submerge it, it's a different thing, but it will handle kind of a general weather resistance and light rain. Let me give you a basic tour of the 18R2. On the front of the unit, we have our key switch, which allows you to turn your unit on and off. In the upper right-hand corner, we have our antenna connector and 6-inch duck antenna. On the top, we have our 1 through 18 cue LEDs, which are great for viewing continuity, as well as what you fired and what you haven't fired during your show. We also have a variety of buttons that we'll be covering later in the demonstration with the 7-segment displays. Also on the 18R2, we have a nice backlight feature. So at night, if you want to be able to see the buttons and the interfaces, it makes it very convenient for you. If I turn the unit around, you'll notice that there is the battery compartment that stores 3 AA batteries. These AA batteries employ about 5 to 6 hours of operation. We are also going to be releasing a lithium polymer rechargeable version of this in the future. If you already own an 18R2, you'll be able to upgrade to this function later on. On the right-hand side of the unit, you'll notice that we have a USB port. The USB port is used for a variety of things. First off, it can be used to connect to our COBRA control panel. This is a graphical user interface into the 18R2. It can also be used for loading automated scripts into the controller, as well as firmware updates, which we'll cover later on within this video. So let's go ahead and power up our 18R2. In order to do that, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to place my key into the 18R2, and I'm going to rotate that to the on position. Now when I do this, as the unit's booting up, it's almost going through a specific checklist or displaying of certain information to the operator. Once it does finish booting up, it'll eventually display the channel of the controller. So let's go back and I'm just going to show you some of that information. So when I power on the unit, the first information I'm going to see is the firmware version. In this case, it's 5.02. I'll do that one more time. 5.02. It's important to mention that COBRA is always improving its systems, which includes updates to the actual software or the firmware directly on the units. As we create improvements, those are available to you as a customer with your current systems. It's also important to mention that all the systems that we've sold since 2010 all support the current firmware versions that we offer. So after the firmware version, we display the actual battery level of the remote. So for example, you'll see 5.02 P9. P9 represents full power on the remote. That number goes from P0 all the way up to P9, and the system will fully operate at any of those power levels, and it will last for about 6 hours of operation. Following the battery level, you'll see the letters TST. What this is doing is it's actually performing a self-test on the system, and you'll see this on all of our core equipment, where the unit is actually checking key functionality to ensure that it is functioning, and if it does sense any type of issues, it will display an error code to the user. After the self-test, you will see two numbers. Those display how many scripts are currently loaded on the controller. In this case, we just have 0, 1 that's displayed, and we'll cover this later on within our demonstration. Now that we've demonstrated the power-up of the 18R2, let's introduce some modules into our demonstration. You'll see that we have 3 modules that we've set up, one of them on channel 1, one of them on channel 2, and one of them on channel 3. You'll notice that on all 3 of the modules, the sync LED is blinking in response to the sync LED blinking on the 18R2. What this means is that these modules have been synced up to this controller, and for security purposes, they will only respond to this controller. For the purposes of this demonstration, we have already synced up the modules to our remote. It's actually a very simple procedure, and we provided a link within the description below showing you how to do this. One of the unique things about COBRA is that we employ bi-directional communication. So what does that actually mean? Well, when you have an entry-level system, a non-COBRA entry-level system, you typically have your modules and you have your controller. And when you're pressing your button on the controller, you're just assuming that those modules have good battery, they have good continuity, they've got everything set up properly to fire. Well, within COBRA, we can actually see all of that information directly from the controller. So we can check to make sure that everything's plugged in properly. We can make sure that we have good signal. We can make sure that we have good battery levels on all of our devices. And with this information, it takes out and removes a lot of the risks of not being able to fire during your show. And it really gives you that confidence as an operator that everything's going to go well. So the first example of this is continuity. So within COBRA, you can see continuity both on your controller and you can also see it on your module. So what is continuity? Continuity is knowing that when you have an igniter clip, an E-match, or one of our MJG initiators connected to a queue on the module, that there is a good connection and that we know that that will fire. So in the case of our 3 modules, we have module 1, where we've got queues 1 through 6 wired up, module 2, where we also have queues 1 through 6 wired up, and on module 3, we have queues 1 through 3 wired up. Now, you can see on the module itself, all you have to do is press and release the test button, and that will display a green LED across all the queues that are wired. You will also see that on the 18R2, queues 1 through 6 are also displaying as green. This is because the module is sending that information directly to the remote. You'll notice that if I remove, for example, Q6 out of module 1, you'll see that that green LED for Q6 will now disappear on the 18R2. And if I plug that back in, you will see that that queue will now display green again because I have good continuity. Now, if I change the channel on my remote, which is very simple, all I have to do is press the channel up and the channel down button, you'll notice that I can go to any one of these modules and I can see whether or not I have good continuity. So for example, if I go to channel 2, you see I have queues 1 through 6, and if I go to channel 3, you'll see I have queues 1 through 3. Now, one of the added features of COBRA is that you can actually set modules to the exact same channel. By doing this, this allows you to fire multiple modules at the exact same time. Now, you can do this within scripting while having modules on different channels, which we'll cover later, but for the basics of continuity demonstration, we're going to go ahead and we're going to set module 3 back down to channel 2. So you'll notice that we have 2 modules on channel 2. Module 2 is actually queues 1 through 6. Module 3 is queues 1 through 3. Now you'll notice on the 18R2 that it has a nice feature. You'll see that queues 4, 5, and 6 are actually blinking. What does this mean? Well, this means that you actually have partial continuity across multiple modules on the same channel. So you may be wondering, how from my 18R2 am I going to differentiate between this module that has queues 1 through 6 and this module which has queues 1 through 3, even though they're on the same channel? Well, And that's done by using the concept of what's called an address, okay? So when you first sync the 18R2 to a module, the 18R2 will assign that module its own address, okay? And an address is kind of like a unique serial number for that module. It's different from the channel. To see that address on the module, all you can do is press and release the test button, and you'll see the address display on the module. So in the case of the first module, this is actually on address 1. And then in the case of the second module, this is actually on address 2. Now on the 18R2, if I repeatedly press the test button, you'll notice that it's going to cycle back and forth between these modules, displaying the continuity for each of them along with their address. Great, now that we've covered the basics of continuity, let's talk a little bit about signal strength. So that's one of the greatest things about COBRA is you can actually determine the quality of the signal to your modules directly from the remote. So how do you do that? Well, let's go ahead and we're going to change this third module back to channel number 3. Now, on the module itself, you'll notice that if you were to press the sync button on the module, so if you just press and release that button, it's going to display a number. Now that number ranges from 0 to -99. Now this is the actual dB value that communicates the quality of the signal at that time. You can view this information directly from the module, or better yet, on your controller, you can perform the exact same thing. So if I put my controller on, for example, channel 1, and I repeatedly press the sync button, you'll notice that it's displaying the signal value. Now, 0 is perfect signal, -99 is poor signal, and what we really recommend is that your signal strength falls anywhere between about 0 and -75. It's also important to notice that that signal strength will drop off quickly at shorter distances, but it does actually kind of tend to plane out. Okay, so again, you just want to check your signal, make sure everything's falling between 0 and -75, and that'll give you the good confidence that you're able to fire. It's also important to mention that in our 5.0 or greater firmware release, COBRA employs mesh technology. So what is mesh technology? Well, mesh actually turns all of your modules into signal repeaters. So instead of relying on direct line of sight to the 18R2 from all of your modules, as long as a module can be communicated to the 18R2 with another module, it's going to dramatically improve your signal. For example, going over hills, around buildings, or really any different type of difficult shoot site. You don't have to be so worried about placement of your modules for signal because everything is repeating the communications, which really dramatically improves the signal across all of your systems. So the last feature for demonstrating our bidirectional communication is what we refer to as the module counts. Now this is a great feature because before you start your show, you'll always know how many modules that you have out in the field. So in our case here, we only have 3. Obviously this could be 30, it could be 50, it could be 100, really however many that you have. When you first power on the 18R2, you notice that the unit is powering up as we went through before, and eventually once it reaches the channel, you'll notice that the test LED on the bottom is blinking. So what is this doing? This is actually going out and it's finding and it's communicating with each of the different modules. Once it completes that, you'll notice that it actually displays the number. And in our case, it's going to display the number 3, meaning that we have 3 modules that we found within the field. This same feature, once we get into arming, is also really important because when we arm the units, it'll also tell us that we have 3 units armed within the field. So it's very critical that you use this feature to confirm that we are in fact seeing and communicating with the total number of modules that you have within your show. Now, before we get into arming and firing of the system, I want to mention that COBRA also has a product called the COBRA Control Panel. I've provided a link to that product within the description. I will show this to you very briefly right here, but what it does is it provides a complete graphical user interface to see all of your modules, including your continuity, battery level, signal strength, key position, really anything that you can access from the 18R2 can also be viewed within the control panel with a lot more. On top of that, the control panel employs different features for firing scripted shows. It's got a Google Earth field map imagery. It also supports some advanced manual firing features, so I definitely encourage you to check out that product below. So now let's get on to the fun part, arming and firing of the modules. You'll notice that on the module, there's actually a key that has 2 different positions. We have the test position and we have the arm position. The reason that we have the test position is when you're out in the field and you may be checking continuity directly on the module, it's really important that you just put that key into the test position. That just makes sure that if someone did have the remote and it was armed, that there's no way that they can fire that module. In addition, we also have some hardware features built into that key being in the test position that also prevent any type of current that could potentially cause those cues to fire inadvertently. We're just going to go ahead and we're going to place all three of our modules in the ARM position. Once the modules have completed booting up, we're going to go ahead from our controller and we're going to press the ARM button in the lower left-hand corner of the controller. Now, similar to the test LED blinking, where it will ultimately display the number of modules in test, this will also blink the ARM LED, which will eventually display the total number of modules that are armed. Now, a great example is, let's imagine that you had a key still within the test position on one of your modules. And in this case, we would actually only see the number 2 come up, and it would actually tell you the address of the module that has the key within the test position. However, in our situation, we actually have the key in the ARM position for all of our modules. You'll notice that we do actually see the number 3 appearing on our remote, and this means that we're ready to fire. Before I demonstrate firing, it's important to mention that COBRA supports both electronic match, which includes professional e-match and the MJG Firewire initiators, as well as the COBRA Talon igniter clips, which are used for traditional consumer VSCO fuse. Now, to support both of those, the module actually has what's called a firing mode. And the two modes that we support are e-match mode, which will fire for 1/10 of a second. So when the cue actually fires, it pulses for 1/10 of a second. Or the Talon igniter clip mode, which actually fires for a full 2 seconds, just to give that igniter clip filament enough time to get red hot and burn into the powder core of the fuse. In order to change the mode on the firing module, all you need to do is press and hold the sync button and press channel up at the same time, where 2.0 will display indicating it's in Talon mode, or if you hold down sync and press channel down, that'll display 0.1, which is 1/10 of a second, or e-match mode. Once you change the mode on the module, it will remember it even if you turn off the unit or if you remove the batteries. So COBRA employs 3 different types of firing features. The first is what we refer to as manual firing. So manual firing it's exactly what you think it is. Going to a specific module by changing the channel, pressing buttons, and manually firing those cues. So let's provide some examples of this. So you'll notice that on my 18R2, I can easily go up and down and go, for example, in my case, channel 1, channel 2, channel 3, and we can actually see on our controller that we have the cue LEDs as green. This means that we actually have live product, we have good continuity on each of these cues for each of our modules. If I want to fire some of those cues, I just go ahead and I simply press the buttons corresponding to that channel and that cue for that module. So for example, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to fire cue number 1 on channel number 1. You can see that when I did that, that actually fired that cue. I can continue this process through additional cues, and what you'll notice, which is really cool on the 18R2, is that it has what's called a firing memory feature. So what it's telling you is that if there's anything that's green, that is a cue that you have not yet fired. If it's displaying as red, that's a cue that you've already fired, and if it's blinking red, that's the last cue that you fired. Now the 18R2 will actually memorize this on all of your modules, so as you're going up and down between your modules, it'll always give you a real-time representation of what has fired and what has still yet to fire. This is a really helpful feature because in your show, it's very common that you're not sure which cue that you fired or which cue that you haven't fired, so the 18R2 is always going to give you a nice real-time view into what's still available within your show. Another manual firing feature that COBRA supports is step firing. There's actually 2 different methods of step firing. There's the basic step firing, which I'll cover right now, and we also have what's called step scripting, which we'll cover later within our scripting section. For basic step firing, what you'll notice is that on the 18R or the 18R2, we have a step button. And how this works is for the channel that you're on when you're armed, if you press the stop button, it'll fire the first cue, for example, cue number 1. If you press it again, it'll fire cue number 2. If you press it again, it'll fire cue number 3, all the way to cue 18. And at that point, the remote will automatically increment itself to the next channel, whereby if you press step again, it'll fire cue 1 on the next channel. And you can keep going throughout all the different channels for as many modules as you have. So this is a nice feature for very basic shows where you just have a sequence of cues that you want to go through. However, it doesn't really support bouncing around between different modules or firing multiple modules at the same time, and that's something that step scripting supports, which we'll cover here in a second. You'll notice that on the 18R and the 18R2, there's an auto fire button. The auto fire button is a very light feature that allows you to execute small sequences where there's a fixed time delay between cues. For example, let's say you wanted to go to a module and fire cues 1 through 12 with a half-second delay in between. All you would need to do is you press the auto fire button. That'll display what looks to be the number 5, but that's really our representation of an S, which refers to the starting cue. So for example, we'll press button number 1. Then we'll proceed by pressing button number 12. That'll display E12, which is representing the ending cue. And to execute this sequence, you'll press the auto fire button. You'll see that this is actually firing with a half-second delay in between. Now, where do you define that fixed timing delay? Well, you'll see at the bottom of the remote, there's two 7-segment displays with plus or minus buttons. You can press these buttons up or down to go anywhere from 0.1 seconds all the way up to 99 seconds per cue. The other thing to mention is that if you continue to hold the auto fire button throughout that sequence, it'll automatically increment to the next channel automatically. Furthermore, if you were doing a sequence from, say, 12 to 1, if you continue to hold the auto fire button, it'll actually decrement that channel automatically. This feature is typically used in smaller special effects applications, for example, bullet hits, things like that. It's not really meant to replace full scripting where you want to hit one button, sit back, and have variable time delays between one or more modules and cues. That's really covered within our automated scripting feature, which we'll discuss here in a few moments. Now that we've demonstrated manual firing, let's talk about one of the coolest and most powerful features of the 18R2, and that is scripting. So what is scripting? Scripting is a way for you to create your show in advance. Whether that's a manual show where you're just continually pressing the same button to cycle through the events of your show, or if it's something where you want to hit one button, sit back, and the show fires automatically from start to finish, or even a combination of both manual and automated events. So you may be asking, how do you create a script? Well, COBRA offers a variety of different methods for creating a script. The first is we offer a free downloadable Excel template that you can get off of our website. We also have our own product called COBRA Show Creator, which is a light PC application for designing shows. And if you're really advanced, we also offer integration into a variety of different high-end visual choreography software packages, including Finale Fireworks. I've provided a series of links within the description below, which will teach you a little bit more about the Excel, Show Creator, and Finale options that we offer. Regardless of the method that you use to create the script, in the end, it's creating a single COBRA CSV file. So this is a comma-separated values file. It's a very simple file that gets placed onto a USB thumb drive, and that USB thumb drive gets inserted into the 18R2 to load the scripts. For the purposes of this demonstration, I have already created a script file. It's on my thumb drive. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and unscrew the cap off of my USB port on the 18R2. I'm going to place my thumb drive into the 18R2 and I'm going to power it on. You'll notice that when the unit powers on, it goes through all the standard checklist of items. Once it reaches the channel, you'll notice that there's a little spin of the LEDs on the top indicating that the script is loading, followed by either all green LEDs or all red LEDs. If you see all green LEDs, that indicates that your script has loaded successfully. If you see all red LEDs, it'll follow by displaying an error number and a line number for each of the issues that it finds. I've provided a link below in the description to our error code sheet, which will help you further identify where the problem is. Now what's great is when you're using COBRA Show Creator or Finale Fireworks or any of the other different integrated software programs, all the error checking is really built into those, so you don't really have to worry too much about running into errors with those software products. The first method of scripting is step scripting. So what is step scripting? Well, it's actually one of the coolest features in COBRA for manual shows. So how step scripting works is you're actually designing a manual show. So you're going into Show Creator, Excel, or whatever program that you're using, and you're entering in all the different modules and channels that you want to fire in whatever order that you want. You don't have to go sequentially from 1 to 18. You can bounce around different modules and fire different cues. This is incredibly beneficial compared to, for example, handwriting all the different events on a piece of paper, having someone next to you that's reading these off to you, fumbling back and forth between the channels, wondering what you fired and what you haven't fired. It simply allows you to continually press the step button and fire that show exactly as you had planned it previously. For a demonstration, I've already loaded a step script into the 18R2. As you can see, we have 3 modules, channel 1, channel 2, and channel 3. In order to start my step script, I'm going to go to channel 1 on the 18R2, and I'm going to press the step button. Now you'll notice on the bottom of the 18R2, it's displaying the letters SP. That's indicating to me as the user to fire the next event. I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to press the step button. You will notice that when I'm pressing the step button, the modules are firing each of those step events as I predefined them in that specific order. You'll notice in some cases it's firing individual modules, and in some cases it's actually firing all modules at the same time. And I can continue to do this and it'll step through the events within my script. And what's great about this is as an operator, I can watch my show, I can see when certain cakes are finishing or when certain effects are finishing, and when they're done, I don't have to leave my eye from the field and I can just continue to press the step button. And this creates a really nice experience, not just for the operator, but also to create better continuity within your show. The second method of scripting is what's called timed event scripting. Now this is what normally you think of with scripting, where you're going to press one button, your show is going to start, modules and cues are going to fire automatically based on how you've pre-planned your show, and it's going to do that from the beginning of the show all the way to the end of the show. Now what's really cool about COBRA is that there's absolutely no limit on the number of cues or the number of channels that you wish to fire at the exact same time. So for example, if I had 10 modules or 20 or 50 or 100 modules in the field, I could fire any number of those cues down to 1/100th of a second resolution. So if you had a front of modules and you wanted to go left to right and right to left, then hit them all at the same time, there's no issues or any types of restrictions with regards to how many you can fire at the exact same time. For the demonstration of time scripting, we're going to use the same modules as before, channel 1, channel 2, and channel 3. And on the 18R2, I'm going to go to channel 1, and I'm going to press button 1 to start my show. Now you'll notice as the show is firing, you'll see that cues are firing automatically on the modules. In addition, at the bottom of the 18R2, you'll notice a countdown. That is the countdown to the next event within the show. Now what's cool within timed event shows is you have the option to automatically fast forward and fire the next cue. So let's imagine a certain cake is firing, that cake ends a little bit early, and you're staring at a 20-second countdown and you're thinking, geez, I've got 20 seconds of black sky. During a timed event script, if you press the step button, it's going to automatically fast forward to the next event and eliminate that black sky. Now, the other benefit of timed event scripts is you can also use them to create pyromusicals. So what is a pyromusical? Well, a pyromusical is when you are playing audio to your audience in the form of a soundtrack to create added emotion for when certain events are firing. For example, you can have certain events hitting different beats of the show, or you're creating different moods along with the style of music that's playing. And in COBRA, you have really 2 different ways of executing pyromusicals. The first is using the product called the COBRA audio box. So we've provided a link in the description below, but what the audio box allows you to do is place your soundtrack onto a USB thumb drive and place that into the audio box. Then you can use a variety of different outputs. We've got headphone jacks, 1/4 inch RCA, and an optional XLR connection on the side for professional use. And when you start your show on the 18R2, the audio box will play in perfect synchronization to your script. In addition, if you were to pause your show on the 18R2, the audio box would pause. If you were to resume, this resumes. So it's a great product. I suggest watching the video in the link below. The other option that we have is the use of SMTPE timecode. So this is more of a professional function, but in a lot of cases, systems have the ability where you can feed a specific timecode file. And in COBRA, we support the SMTPE format. directly into the 18R2 so that the 18R2 is now playing alongside the time code that it's being fed. And we have a couple of cool different options, and again, we'll provide a link below to learn a little bit more about our SMTPE integration, but COBRA's got a number of different options for executing Pyromusicals. So the third method of scripting is a combination of the first method, which is step scripting, and the second method, which is timed event scripting. So really a combination step timed event script. It's really more of a step script, so it's a manual show that you're walking through by pressing the step button. However, you may want to introduce little sequences. For example, a left to right chase, or you may want to hit a wall where you have a number of positions firing at the same time, and then you want to go back into doing manual firing. So it's really a combination of manual firing followed by sequences, back to manual firing, etc. And that allows you to really kind of create a very cool manual show that has a little bit more professionalism with some cool effects built in. Now I've created a very simple example of this functionality by loading a script into my 18R2. I'm going to go ahead and start that script by pressing the step button on the controller. And we're going to begin by a very simple manual step going from channel 1 to 3, Q1 on each module. So begin with Q1 on channel 1, Q1 channel 2, Q1 channel 3. Now we're going to execute a very simple left to right chase. So this is the timed event component of the script. So I'm going to press step and you'll see 2, 2, and 2 firing on all three modules. Now again, back to very basic manual firing. We've got Q3, channel 1, Q3, channel 2, Q3, channel 3. Now we're going to do a right to left chase, Q4, 4, and 4, followed by a final manual step, Q5, Q5, Q5. Now we're going to hit all three modules at the same time across all channels on Q6. You'll see all of them hit. For even further demonstrations of combining step and time scripting, I actually included a link within the description below that shows us doing this using our COBRA Show Creator product. It's a great little video and it's really helpful. One of the benefits of COBRA, beyond its modular design for repairability, is the ability for you to purchase different add-ons that expand the functionality and features of the 18R2. For example, we offer the control panel, which is an Android-based graphical user interface into the 18R2. We have the audio box, which allows you to perform perfect music synchronization with your controller. We have different signal accessories and boosters and antennas that we can offer to improve your signal within the system. And finally, a deadman control. On top of this, COBRA is also working on additional add-ons. Those include a lithium polymer upgrade kit for your 18R2, 2-wire communications, a larger centralized command center that includes your tablet and your controller, SMTPE timecode integration, and also DMX. As a COBRA customer, we will keep you updated with these add-ons so you can look to purchasing them in the future. In addition to physical add-ons that expand the functionality of the 18R2, COBRA also offers routine firmware updates to its system. So what is a firmware update? Well, very similar to your smartphone that allows you to upgrade to the newest operating systems, COBRA works in a very similar way. You can actually download new firmware updates from our website. You can use a device called the wireless reprogrammer to actually perform those updates, and you can take advantage of the new features that we are constantly working to improve. Let me give you some examples of feature improvements. Recently, within our 5.0 release, we came out with the ability to fire cues down to 1/100th of a second timing accuracy. We also released mesh functionality. That's the ability for all devices to act as signal repeaters. In the future, we're working on additional functionality such as expanding ourselves from 100 channels, which is 1,800 cues, all the way up to 400 channels, which is 7,200 cues. We're adding the ability to refire cues that will lend itself to future DMX support integration. The ability to disable modules, groupings of cues, or even positions. These are all examples of different features that doesn't require any additional hardware necessarily. It's just a software update directly to the systems. In order to perform the firmware updates, all you need is a wireless reprogrammer. That's a device that we sell on our website for $99. Once you own this, you can use this device for any future updates. All of the software downloads off of our website are for free. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this demonstration. Now, before I wrap things up, I want to mention that COBRA is a great product. It's a reliable product, a feature-rich product. However, any product is really only as good as that company's service that they provide. Now, if you speak to our customers, you'll learn that we take a lot of pride in providing great customer service. We provided our email address and my phone number here, and if you have any questions, contact us. We're friendly, we're helpful, and finally, we have also provided links to all the different sections of the video below, so if you want to rewatch them, come back and check them out. In addition, if you're not already a COBRA customer today, we look forward to having you join the family.